Hello everyone. I'm really excited to be here in this festival, and I can see some familiar names in the chat box, lots of people from Argentina. And so my session is about finding peace in a communicative language learning environment. So for this part of the festival, we're going to bring it down for a bit at the beginning, and we're going to bring in some peace. So take a moment to find peace. Listen, take a deep breath, and think about the question on the slide. Can you identify moments in your classroom that feel peaceful? Please write your thoughts in the chat box. What are those moments in your classroom that you find are peaceful? What makes you think of peace in a classroom? What do you see in a peaceful classroom? Some good ideas coming in. Lovely. Thank you very much for your ideas in the chat box, everyone. Wonderful. Okay, so we've got some nearly always, so that's good. And then we've got some agreement and harmony, reading time. Some funny, I never have those moments when they're doing a controlled exercise or worksheets. Okay, so not so much to do with a communicative classroom if they're doing very controlled exercises. My students preparing mental maps, that's very nice. When they write tests, listening to songs or music while they work. When students get ready for the test, during tests, students are at peace and smiling. That's lovely. Nearly always. Well done. Fantastic. When they're engaged. Lovely, lovely stuff. Thank you. Mindful music. When things work out. Yeah. Okay. While they're busy, when they're working, when you see everyone enjoying. Lovely ideas. Okay, so peace. Isn't that nice? Who doesn't want peace in their classrooms? But the opposite does exist. It's just a fact. I'm just being realistic. What would you say is the opposite of peace? In the chat box, please. What is the opposite of peace? Chaotic, anxiety, organized chaos, stress, noise, yeah, mess. Okay. Can you identify moments when you feel conflict, chaos, mess? What moments in your class bring about chaos? Screaming without reason, that's not nice, is it? Okay. Hot discussion, says Svetlana. Yes. What moments in your class do you feel that you can find chaos? Group work brings chaos. Oh, pop-up quizzes when they're not paying attention. Debates, playing games, discussions, minutes before recess. Okay, group games. Students are overexcited or rude. Okay. Now, just to find out a little bit about your context, do you employ a communicative methodology in your classroom? Do you employ a communicative methodology in a classroom? At least bits and pieces. It doesn't have to be a strong version of it. It might be a light version of it. That's okay. Yeah, okay. Everyone is saying yes. I was expecting that. I think the majority of teachers today implement a methodology that reflects communicative language teaching in one way or another, more or less, but it's present there. Okay, so a big majority of you point out that you use communicative language teaching. But what do you mean by communication? So Alejandra is saying many games. Okay, what else do you do? to create a communicative environment, interaction, meaningful activities, active listening, pair work and group work, engaging, interviews, it's student-centered, information gap filling, dialogues, role plays. Okay, sharing life stories, that's nice. Okay, so there's a lot of things you do in your class that is communicative. Some of these, you said before, bring chaos, like interaction, like group work and pair work. Yeah. So what we're going to do today is find out how we can swap that chaos in the classroom and turn it into a peaceful environment while we're doing communicative activities. One of the main points of communicative learning environments is that individuals must interact. So I thought we would make this a communicative session. What do you think? Can we have a lot of ideas flowing, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of sharing, interacting and communicating, and use the chat box for that? We've got the chat box. So yes, let's do it, Marina. Thank you. Absolutely, Michael. Thank you. So let's make it communicative so that you can communicate your ideas as well through the chat box. Use it for anything you like, ask questions or contribute ideas, share your thoughts. Okay, so this session looks at how teachers and learners can find themselves sliding into chaos in communicative classrooms and how we can solve that to find peace. We're just going to look, we just thought about your context. You told me a little bit about what you do in your classrooms, which is great info. We've discussed a little bit what we mean by communicative, but we'll go into that a little more, because adopting a communicative methodology means that learners have a bit more freedom. But how much learner freedom can you afford as a teacher? How much is too much? How much is too little? Because then it becomes totally controlled by the teacher. So it's no longer a communicative activity, is it? Okay. Next, we're going to find that chaos in the communicative classroom can exist, but then we're only going to try and find peace. So don't stress. Okay. Communicative language teaching sets as its goal the teaching of communicative competence, which you can compare, if you like, to the concept of grammatical competence, yeah, which refers to the knowledge of language, the building blocks of sentences, parts of speech, etc., how sentences are formed, learning grammar rules, practicing how to use the grammar rule, yeah. Earlier views of language learning focused mainly on the mastery of grammatical concepts. So it's more of a mechanical process, memorization, controlled practice, drill of correct sentences, no errors accepted. Grammatical competence is an important dimension of language learning. I'm not saying it's not, but it's clearly not all that is involved in learning language. You can master the rules, but still not be very successful at being able to use the language for meaningful communication, can't you? So that is communicative competence, knowing how to use the language, not randomly, but for a range of different purposes and functions, suitable to the setting, the context, the people, the register, making yourself understood, knowing how to compensate for limitations, your strategic competence, anything to overcome difficulties that might lead to communicative breakdown. Okay, so we're going to look through a window now, and we're going to have a little sneak peek through those windows into different classrooms. Will you join me? Have a little sneak peek into 2 different classrooms. It's always fun to see what others are doing in their classrooms, isn't it? So here's classroom number 1, and here is classroom number 2. Classroom number 1, classroom number 2. Where do you find chaos? In classroom number 1 or in classroom number 2? Okay, I think everyone agrees. Classroom number 1, we can see mostly chaos. Where do you think communication is working better? In classroom number 1 or number 2? Where do you think communication is working better? Yes, okay, I think so too. In classroom number 2, I think communication is working better. Although students are standing, it seems like communication is flowing better among them. They're not sitting down, they're not quiet, working with their workbooks, they're standing up, but it's much more peaceful than the other classroom. And it seems like communication is working better. So you can tell a peaceful classroom from one full of chaos, can't you? We usually don't want chaos in our lives. We don't go around searching for chaos, finding chaos, but you'll have to move away from your comfort right now and help me find chaos for a minute, okay? And we'll finally find peace, but help me find chaos for a minute. So here comes some of my ideas and some that I took from research papers that I've been reading when I was reflecting upon perceived problems or challenges that you might find in a communicative environment. As we're finding chaos, we're finding things, I thought maybe you could find the missing words to complete these next points coming up on the slide. Okay, so in the chat box, please. You're already doing it. Hey, wait for the instructions. Okay, group and pair work. Thank you very much for number 1. That's already a natural force of chaos. You said it. Students become too active, really hard to control. Forming groups is already a hassle, isn't it? Number 2, the physical this is a difficult one. The physical environment. Someone said it. Renata, I think it is. The physical environment. Many language classrooms around the world are not ideal for communication between students because of the fixed desks, the fixed chairs in rows facing the teacher. Great for accuracy exercises. How about number 3? Many of you mentioned noise. Noise and not mess, but movement. Yes, someone said movement, with students shuffling and moving around in order to complete the task, causing a lot of noise. Number 4, resistance to participate. Amir, yes, students often feel shy, reluctant to speak, don't have the confidence to participate in speaking activities, and only a limited number of learners actually do participate in the discussions. And when they do, are they on task? Can they stay on task? Are they talking about their favorite TV program in their mother tongue, or are they actually doing the task? Recognize any of these? And that leads us to number 5, low English proficiency. Daphne, do they have the language that is needed for interacting and for fulfilling this exercise? That can be very frustrating. And because of the low English proficiency of learners, they will make mistakes. They will make mistakes anyway because they're learning. So we need to accept mistakes, but there will be a lot of mistakes. And that's difficult for us to control ourselves sometimes and accept those mistakes. And you can't go around helping everyone at the same time. And one of the reasons you can't go around helping everyone at the same time is number 6, large groups. You said it, yes. Beyond a certain class size, teaching communicatively raises the problem of control, not being able to be with everyone at the same time, etc. There's a mismatch, number 7, between curriculum and assessment. Yagana, yes. Grammar-based exams or standardized tests are principally testing vocabulary and grammar, sometimes reading comprehension with right or wrong answers, multiple choice tests, and many times we find that speaking activities or interactive activities, communication is not tested. So you do that in the classroom, but then you don't test it. So it's unbalanced, isn't it? And then number 8, this is for the teachers. Workload, William, thank you. Demanding and heavy workload for the teachers. There can be a lot of uncontrolled language. It's very much less predictable in a communicative environment than in a traditional teaching context. You are no more the sage on the stage, but you are now a guide on the side, taking the role of monitor and facilitator. And we have to accept that role. You need to be prepared to confront all types of questions, of language problems that come from your learners. And so there is a lot you can't prepare for, but what you can prepare for, developing materials, finding authentic, but it can be quite time consuming, and you want to be as fully prepared as you can with what you can be prepared, because there's a lot that will be unpredictable. That that was harsh. Too much chaos, too much war. Does this sound like your classroom? I hope not, but I'm here to offer help and hope because it doesn't have to be this way. So let's find peace. We're going to look at an example, and we're going to use this example to then find peace and look at 12 tips that I've got for you. And this example comes from Share It, one of Macmillan's courses for primary. And we're going to use it to think of how it could bring chaos and find ways for it to bring peace. In this activity, learners are in pairs and talk about what they want for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They ask and answer about food using language such as, what do you want for dinner? I want a burger and pie, please. Quite straightforward, really, isn't it? So what students get is this. They're in pairs and they get a different page and they cut out their sets of cards. So they have different sets of cards. Listen carefully to the instructions. Both students place their food cards, those means apple, banana, pancakes, in one pile face up. And the meal cards, that means breakfast, lunch, dinner, in another pile face down. Student A picks a meal card from the card pile and asks student B, what do you want for breakfast, lunch, or dinner? Okay, whatever comes up. And student B picks up 2 food cards from either pile and uses them to answer the question. I want pizza and ice cream, please, or whatever. Then they switch. Okay. But then it develops into a role play, with students being the waiter or waitress at a restaurant and the customer ordering food. Okay, it's quite straightforward, really. Yes, Lilia, there is interaction. But then you have those who say, what do you want for dinner? Rather than what do you want for dinner? And those who only answer burger. And you're racking your brains to try to find out how you can get them to say, I want a burger and pie, please. And then there are those who do it in L1 because they're really interested, they're engaged, they want to communicate. But which is their natural way of communicating? L1. They want to tell their friend what they like for breakfast, dinner, but they do it in their own language. Then the noise volume increases. There are those who haven't even started yet. They're still trying to drag their desks together. And then there are those who didn't even understand the instructions. They didn't even get it. Chaos. Okay, it looks very straightforward to us, but in the classroom, this can be total chaos. So let's think of ways to find order out of that chaos. Here are my 12 tips. First, start early. If there is normally a heavy focus on memorization of rules, lots of practice in reading, writing, listening, answering multiple choice questions, little practice in speaking, students find it difficult to adjust themselves to the concept of a communicative environment. So start early with them, do it often with them. Pre-primary, so before they enter primary, pre-primary focuses on listening and speaking because they form the foundation to the acquisition of the other 2 skills of reading and writing. So continue that. Don't stop it there because they've done lots of listening and speaking in pre-primary. Keep it up. Keep doing it. Now that they know the basics of speaking and listening, they need to learn to communicate more freely and about their interests. So balance it out. Okay, we've got a nice comment from Fernando. Most of the chaos that students experience is caused by the teacher. Some of the causes are not well-prepared activities, no clear objectives, a lack of management, bringing personal issues into the class, etc. Yes, I agree totally. So a lot of planning is very important too. Yes, and we'll look at that in a sec. So get them to do lots of communicative activities from the very start so that they get used to it. But start small, start with a little more control activities to then grow, and you have these baby steps in it. Balance it out language-wise. We said that communicative language teaching can be compared, if you like, to the concept of grammatical competence. Okay, they look sort of opposites, don't they? But my question is, can both coexist? Grammatical competence and communicative competence. Can they live together in a communicative language learning classroom? Sure, says Julia. Alicia says, yes. Okay. Yes, grammatical competence is important for any communicative approach. Learning a language concerns not only the learner's fluency, but also their accuracy. It's a myth that a communicative approach should avoid any grammar. There is room for grammar exercises that ensure students practice language in a more controlled way. Drilling that language. Drilling isn't a bad word. You can write it on the board, have an SOS board or a help board where students know you will write the language they need and can refer to during the communication task. So this that you can see on the screen is the complete page. I only gave you the communicative activity before, which is at the bottom. Notice that at the top of the page, it says lesson 5, grammar. So we're starting with the grammar, and actually the day before we did vocabulary. We did a vocabulary lesson to learn banana, apple, burger, pie. Now we're going on to grammar. They're doing a grammar exercise. They're doing a listening exercise before they go into the communicative activity where we want them to interact. So notice the baby steps. You don't just go ahead and do the communicative activity. It's a good idea to do to work on grammatical competence before they thrown in to do the communicative activity, and after, because you still want to look at what went on in that communicative activity and work on any grammar that is necessary. Okay. Create a positive classroom, build relationship and trust. Okay, this is really important if you want interaction to happen. Students need to feel part of a supportive community where they trust each other, where they feel encouraged to ask questions, where they try their best. Maybe those shyer students will start to participate more. Give a lot of positive encouragement all the time. This is social emotional learning. They need to feel safe to participate and to expose themselves in the classroom. Train learners for pair and group work. It's not easy. Train them for it. Get them used to it and working with others, not just best friends all the time. Mix them regularly so they're not always working with the same partner. If you do this often enough, they get used to that's the way it is. Switching partners strengthens the class sense of community as they work with other classmates. So this is a tip from Share It Teacher's book. And it says, make sure students work with different partners. One way to do this is to use a mix, freeze, pair strategy. You say mix, students stand up and walk around the class, passing different classmates as they move around. Then say freeze to get students to stop walking. And finally say pair. Students pair up with the classmates standing closest to them. So that's a good way of getting them to change. Fruit salad is a great game before you do any communicative activities. You have them sitting in a circle, if possible. You give out 2 cards. You have 2 sets of cards. So you have 2 apples, 2 bananas, 2 strawberries, 2 pears, and you give them out. When you say apples, the 2 apples stand up, swap places and sit down. You say bananas, the 2 bananas stand up, swap places and sit down. You say strawberries, they do the same. When you say fruit salad, everybody stands up and swaps places. When you do that, they're sitting next to someone else. So they've got a different partner to work with. And you can do this as many times as you want, checking that best friends don't always sit next to their best friend. Another way of separating students into pairs or groups is writing numbers on small cards, then write them again so you repeat them. So you have 2 of each number, hand out the cards or have students come and choose a card and they find the partner who has the matching number. You can do the same with letters or words or questions or pictures. And use as many as you like. So if you need groups, you could have 4 of the same number so that those are the 4 people who are going to become part of the group. Be sensitive to learners' interests, personalize activities, make it relevant. Use relevant materials, connect it to students' lives. They need to be emotionally invested in learning. It's personally meaningful to them. Okay, so in this case, what we could do with the example from Share It is we can personalize it. And perhaps what students can do is make their own drawings and talk about what they would really like to have for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Because maybe what they would really like is not on those cards that they've been given. So maybe they could add their own drawings and place their meal cards and their food cards and actually talk about what they really want for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And then you can get more words into that lesson, which are the words that they're interested about. They're interested in knowing how to say those words that they like eating for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Personalize it. Accept mistakes and encourage risk-taking. While they're speaking, don't interrupt to correct them. I know you want to. I know you hear a mistake and you want to go straight away to correct it. It's perfectly normal if they struggle a little bit, okay? It's part of learning. Don't correct every single mistake as you hear it happening. Take a deep breath. Okay, and remind yourself every time your student says, he go to the supermarket, you're not going to go and correct that straight away if it's a communicative activity. You'll do it later. Okay, is that typical around the world where students say he go to the supermarket? It's very typical in Argentina instead of he goes to the supermarket. And so encourage risk-taking in a positive environment. In China it is as well. Yes, it's very typical all over the world. Okay, so if you find mistakes in the communicative activity, write them down and work on them later as a follow-up step. You can work on them anonymously first, so nobody feels like they're in the spotlight. If there are consistent errors, then maybe you want a little sweet, positive, constructive one-to-one chat with the learner. But if it's something quite general, if it's not something consistent, you can do it anonymously, write it on the board after the communicative activity and work on that. Change the physical environment. When I think of environment, the environment influencing learning, I think of the Reggio Emilia approach, in which the environment is considered the third teacher. It invites curiosity and discovery. Okay, the physical space is said to directly affect the learning that takes place. Rows of students, typically found in classrooms, inhibit interaction. They don't enable interaction. If possible, if you have the chance to do so, be a bit naughty and move the desks around, put them back where they were when you finish though for the next teacher, but create different layouts, horseshoe shape, a circle of desks, or even no desks at all. Move them to the side, move them to the back, okay, and dress your walls. Have students gather around a poster or a stimulating photograph to discuss or describe. So this breaks with the idea that you need to be sitting to learn. No, we don't. Okay, take them outside if possible. Maybe you can take them outside if you have a big group. Okay, a noisy classroom is a happy classroom. So those of you who are a bit afraid of the chaos of noise in the classroom, getting students walking around, talking to each other, playing games, there will be a hum or a buzz of learning, and this is a good buzz. It's a good sign. Okay, accept it will be noisy. It's a communicative classroom. Do you want students who are noisy and active, or do you want students who are quiet and focused, but the teacher is lecturing from the front? It's better to have them interacting in a communicative classroom. Don't be scared of a noisy classroom, but it has to be within a framework of a well-managed classroom. Like someone said before, management is very important. Perhaps you can talk to them and teach them and train them about their voice, a voice thermometer. So you can use a presenting voice so the whole class can hear you, or use table talk, only your table can hear you. And these last two I love: spy mode, whispering, talking to the person next to you, or ninja mode, complete silence right now, because you're going to give them the instructions or whatever. So there are lots of different ones out there that you can find and train them and use it a lot for different activities so they know which type of voice they're supposed to be using. And if they're not, you tap, oh, Martin, look, you're not using your table talk voice. Develop classroom management strategies, really important. I can't stress the importance of classroom management enough. Perhaps the biggest obstacle to achieve peace in a communicative classroom. Consider rewards. If you're a reward person, that can be very motivating. Reward sheets, stars, not only for perfect language use though, remember, because it's not a grammar exercise, but for communicative competencies such as confidence, initiative, willingness to try new language, participation. Okay, regulate behavior by using a traffic light system if you like. You can write their names on clothes pegs or pieces of paper. If they're on green, they're doing really well. If they're going down to yellow, not so well. If they're on red, that's not very good. But you always give them the possibility to go up again. You can have cups of different colors or cards of different colors that they have on their desks. They use green on top if they're okay, they're doing fine. They put red on top if they're stuck, if they've stopped and they need help. Otherwise, you have them raising their hand, waiting for you to come, and it takes for ages. So a nice system is that when you see a red cup or a red card, you come to them. Attention grabbers. I love these. What would you say if I say Scooby-Dooby-Doo? What would you answer? Scooby-Dooby-Doo? What would you answer to that? Does anyone know? Where are you, Shalita? Yes, Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? Hands on top. Everybody stop. Okay, or now we stop. Hocus pocus. What's the answer to that? Hocus pocus. Everybody focus. Bozena. Very good. So what we do is we teach these. I say Scooby-Dooby-Doo. You say, where are you? And then I whisper it, or I say it in a lower voice, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. And they say, where are you? And we go down, down, down until everyone is quiet, focusing and looking at the teacher. This is when you want to stop an activity. Yeah, you can't get their attention when they're speaking, because otherwise you'd have to shout, wouldn't you? So when they hear Scooby-Dooby-Doo, they know that's the clue to stop and listen. Instruction giving is really important. Always demonstrate the activity first. And you can use a mirror strategy. This is whole brain teaching strategy called mirror words. And you say mirrors up, and all your students do the same as you. Mirrors up. And this means you imitate what I say and what I do. Cut out the cards. And everyone says, cut out the cards. Food cards face up. Food cards face up. Meal cards face down. Meal cards face down. And you go on. You'd say all your instructions like that. And then you say mirrors away. And they go mirrors away. And you put them down. It's much better than saying, did you understand? They say yes, and then they haven't. They internalize the instructions much better when they say them than if they just hear them. Have a downtime plan. What are you going to do with fast finishers? Is there anything that they can do? Silent reading, jumpstart their homework, be the teacher's helper, figure out some brain boosters, help another group, do a STEAM challenge. I don't know, whatever you want, but think about that, because some groups will finish before others, and that will create chaos. So think about that, have it pre-planned. Take baby steps, give a lot of support. Notice that this activity started much more guided with a script, more like a game. It's to boost confidence language-wise, to use the script first, but then it moves on to the personalized activity where we had them draw and actually say what they really like for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And the next step is having groups of 3 or whatever, acting out being at a restaurant. And you've got the customers and the waiters or waitresses using that same language. So this is the freer activity. Yeah, where they're communicating and doing a role play. See how this is all scaffolding and baby steps to reach that communicative aim. So these are the 12 tips that I prepared for you today. They're all here. And I hope these will help you to find some peace, not war in your classroom, not chaos. We've got a comment from Susanna, talking about teens. Yes, teens is a different area, isn't it? This is a primary course, so I'm giving you tips for primary. Yeah, and it works. She says that it works with her groups to raise the hand and everybody does it and everybody stays quiet. Yeah, that's a great management tip. But even for pre-primary, primary and secondary, yeah, you can use it with all levels, raising your hand. So I would like to know, from these tips or any practical idea that I gave you today, what is one piece of advice you will give to a new communicative teacher about finding peace, not chaos, in a communicative environment? What would that one piece of advice be? Lovely ideas, yes. A routine, yes, Daphne. Attention grabbers, the mirror. clear instructions. Don't be a perfectionist. Yeah, you need to let mistakes flow. Never shout at students, absolutely. Model the activities, humor, preparation, instructions. Use lead-in scaffolding. Lovely ideas. Okay, these are great. This is great advice for a new communicative teacher so that she or he can find peace. Thank you very much. And I think that all teachers should have this message on the doors of their classroom. Sorry about the laughter, noise, chaos, and mess, but we are learning. Thank you very much for joining me, for interacting, for all your ideas. Thank you, Macmillan, for organising this festival. It's been lovely. And I think we might have some questions, Nathan.
Hi, Sarah. How are you doing? Well done. It was an amazing session. And congratulations for keeping up with the chat box in the way that you do. It whizzes by so quickly. And yet you were there, like plucking people's names out of it. So
yeah, I tried to do my best. Sorry if I mentioned it. Maybe someone said it before, but that's the one I grasped just then and there. So yeah.
No, you did an amazing idea. And there's so many, so much thanks coming through, and everybody engaging. And what I love about these this festival is that everybody's been so engaging in the chat box, putting down their thoughts, engaging with the activities. It's really great to see. There was loads of stuff to take away for teachers in that session. I love loads of the different things. And some of them are applicable right across the learning journey: scaffolding learning, setting routines, setting expectations, but being consistent with them. I think that was a nice message that came through. Not just doing something one time and then trying something else. Make it consistent with very young learners. They need that, absolutely. I think.
Yeah, and they need to get used to that way of working, don't they? Otherwise, they don't really know how to go about it. And that's when chaos starts, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You had a really nice recommendation for people, which was Reggio Emilia, which I studied actually a long, long time ago. It's a really nice philosophy or approach. Philosophy, I think it is. There's a really great book, actually, The 100 Languages of Children by Reggio Emilia. So I would definitely recommend to people to look that up. Gives you loads of great advice about getting students communicating, different ways that they need to communicate. So I'd recommend that. There are a few questions. I've got one myself, actually, because one thing that I was thinking throughout was, would you recommend a flipped classroom approach? Would that help to create a more communicative classroom?
Okay, I was expecting questions about online teaching, because that's, you know, the thing nowadays, isn't it? And there's lots of things that I've been saying that you'd say, okay, but how do I form groups if they're online or things like that? So flipped classroom comes into there as well. Yeah, I think we've learned a lot, haven't we, with the pandemic? And we've started off with a lot of chaos, and we've, I think, learned to find peace with our online or flipped classrooms. I think it can be very useful. I think it can be a good way around to do communicative activities as well, but you have to work on it in a very different way, I think, because what works in the face-to-face classroom doesn't always work on the online classroom. So you really need to think about how you would adapt, but I think everything is adaptable. You don't need to start from scratch, do you? But I think you can in a flipped classroom or on an online environment. You can work with communication, but you always need to build that trust first. That's the important thing. So if you've got a bit of face-to-face and a bit online, that's great, because when you're face-to-face, you do all the trust building and the confidence building, and then you can really work on that very nicely when you're online. But if you're always online, start with your confidence building activities first. Not necessarily language focused at the very beginning, but build that trust at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly from my experience in MENA, in the Middle East and North Africa, I think a lot of people still use a PPP approach. And I think one of the issues with that is you tend to run out of time when it comes to the communication, the productive skills. So I think a flipped classroom definitely can help in that. Get them to engage with videos, model the language that way, teach them the vocabulary before the lesson, and then get them to do these interactive. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, you use the most of your face-to-face classroom to do the communication, and you can do the grammar competence before that or after that online, can't you? Or give them things to do at home related to that. But then when you're all together, make the most of that moment that you've got with everyone together. Yeah. Essential. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. Getting people to make the most of the actual time they have with students. Get that as communicative as possible. If they make mistakes, doesn't matter. They can go away and figure that out afterwards, but get them engaging. Yeah, I love that. And we've got time perhaps for one very, very quick question, although I don't know if it's a very easy question. What about, somebody's mentioned SEN, but what about differentiation? Does that impact on students' communicative abilities, these kinds of things?
Yeah, well, you'll always have a mixed group, won't you? You've always got the strong students, the weaker students, and those in the middle. And you've got to really pay attention to everyone. And you're the teacher. You're the one who knows best where each student is on your scale of assessment. And yes, when it comes to differentiation, you might need a bit more work in the grammar competence, in the drilling, in the learning of the vocabulary with some students to be able to reach that moment when they can actually have the conversation or they can actually do the role play. So it does get very tricky, of course, but you can do lots of work with them. You can move them along that scale quite smoothly, I would say. And when it comes to the communicative activity, you will know who probably will make most mistakes or who will need more help. So you can always be with them to help them out there. And as I was saying in one of the examples, you might have, coming back to the example from Share It, you might have the child who says, what you like for dinner, and you know who that's probably going to be, and you'll have the child who answers burger, just that, and that's it, instead of the whole sentence. So you know who those will probably be. So you can encourage those a little bit more, give them a little bit more work, and be with them a bit more, support them more, and after the task, you will always have this moment where you come back to them anonymously with their mistakes or with the problems you found. So you can always work with those who need more help.
Yeah, and we've done loads of stuff on advancing inclusivity. So there's loads of support for teachers out there around SEN and differentiation, these types of things. But yeah, I think part of it is mindset, not seeing it as a disadvantage, but actually trying to turn it into an advantage. Bring those differences into the classroom. Give students an opportunity to talk about them. Make them communicative. I think that's. Somebody's put in the chat box, can we take your phrase, the environment is the third teacher? That's going to be my final question to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's not my phrase, but it's Loris Malagusi's phrase, who is the Reggio Emilia philosophy founder. So yeah, it's not my phrase, but you can take it, of course.
Well, Sarah, thank you very much. I know you're doing another session this afternoon for you. So we will let you rest for a little while, but thank you so much from myself and from all of the teachers. There's been over 800, I think, nearly 900 teachers watching today. So, and there's been loads of great interaction, and I'm sure that people have got a lot from that session. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Thank you everyone for being here. Bye for now.
See you soon. For those of you who have been interested in some of the activities that you've been seeing in Sarah's presentation, they've all been related to our primary American English course, which is Share It. And we're going to be doing one of the parallel sessions, a Q&A and showcase on that. So if you want to know more about that, I will point you in the right direction in a second. But Share It is a really great course for getting students interacting with the language, creating positive learning environments. We know how difficult it is, and Sarah quite rightly pointed out the challenges that many teachers around the world face when it comes to mixed ability classes, when it comes to large group sizes. I've worked in many different parts of the world. I remember in Malaysia seeing primary classes of 50, 60 students in one room. So we know the challenges that you face out there in your own teaching context. But moving towards a more communicative learning environment is quite often about creating a change in mindset, as we've mentioned, building students' self-esteem, creating a positive learning environment. And Sarah's done lots of webinars before on this. So if you go to macmillanenglish.com and go to the webinar archive, you can find some of Sarah's previous webinars where she talks about developing the positive learning environment. So go and check them out as well. And of course, there's loads of activities in Share It to get students engaging in pair work, group work, whole class work. And there's loads of little tips, as Sarah showed in her presentation as well. But getting students competent and confident as communicators is a big part of Share It. So go and check that out at macmillanenglish.com.